My name is Terry Abrams. I'm the curator for the Niagara County History Center, located on 215 Niagara Street in Lockport. And so I'm here to talk about the donation process of what happens if somebody wants to donate an artifact to our collection. So there's a whole series of steps that are involved in donating an artifact. We have a form, a donation form that people have to fill out. They put their name, their address on it. They put in the information about the artifact that they want to donate, where it came from, what it is, and what they know about it, any sort of historical information that they have about the artifact itself. So they do that. They bring it in, and then we take it. We process the information. We assign a temporary custody number to the artifact, and then the artifact goes to our collections committee, and they review it, and we determine if the artifact meets our mission. And so then if it does, if it's something that we feel is historically important, is relevant to our mission, which we cover Niagara County, so anything involved, in that respect, we bring that in, and so the collections committee will approve it, and then it becomes accessioned into the collection, and then we assign it another number that we keep in our database to keep track of all the items, so that we can know where they're located. We can call up the information about this particular artifact, and that way, when we put it on, if we put it on exhibit, then we'll have the information ready at hand. First thing we're going to look at is an artifact, a specific artifact from the collection, and this particular artifact is a wedding dress. Now, normally we no longer accept wedding dresses into our collection. In the past, we've accepted several of them, and so we have quite a collection already, and we don't feel that we need more unless there is a special exception, and that is the case in this particular one. So I'm going to pull this out. Here you can see this is quite a long dress, and this is the wedding dress of Dorothy Nagy. And the reason that this dress is unique and is important to our collection is because back in 2004, Mrs. Nagy donated her wedding portrait. And this wedding dress is the dress that's in that portrait. Now, there's quite a story that goes along with this dress. The portrait had been put up on exhibit as part of an art exhibit here, and somebody saw it, and they knew Dorothy, and so they told her, that her portrait was on exhibit, and so she came with her daughter Doreen to look at the portrait, and they saw it. And so she said that she still had her wedding dress. So she offered to donate it to us, and so I readily accepted, because we had the dress, we had a portrait of the dress, of her in the dress, and so we thought it would be sort of a nice touch to have the actual dress, in our collection as well. And as I talked to Dorothy, I sort of got her story. I asked her, well, so how did you meet? How did you and your husband get together? And so she told me this very interesting story. They got married during the war. The thing about the portrait is that it was painted by prisoners of war, German prisoners of war, during World War II. They were being held up at Fort Niagara, and her husband was a staff sergeant stationed there at Fort Niagara, one of the people tasked with keeping an eye on these prisoners. And so when they got married, they offered to paint her portrait. They didn't paint it from life. They painted it from a photograph, because the outsiders weren't allowed into the fort. The prisoners at that time. So, but how they met was that Dorothy and a friend of hers, they had just come out of the Palace Theater on Main Street in Lockport. And they were standing there on the sidewalk when her husband, Alexander Nagy, he and a friend drove up. And she doesn't remember her friend's name, she doesn't remember his friend's name, but his friend drove up, and apparently his friend knew her friend. And so, they stopped to talk to them, and, and the friend, Alex's friend says, he said to the two young women, he says, "Do you drink beer?" He says, "I've got $1. If you drink beer, I'll buy you a drink." And so, they were in, this was 1944, thereabouts. And, it was one of those old-fashioned, automobiles with a rumble seat in the back. So Dorothy and her friend hopped into the rumble seat, and they drove down to, to a little place down on Market Street, I believe. And, they went down there, they had their drink, she said that, about 2 weeks later, she started dating Alex. And 6 months later, they were married. She believes that they were the first military wedding at the First Presbyterian Church in Lockport. And, she said that, they had their reception in her parents, at the home of her parents, in their backyard, because it was the war. They couldn't, food was being rationed. They had to, they had to watch their, their money. They couldn't spend, for a big lavish affair at that time. So, so that's a little, interesting tidbit about, this particular artifact.